and welcome to the Project Management Paradise podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Murphy, and today I'm joined by Patti Viri-Cruz to discuss the topic of the power of diversity in the modern workplace. Patti is the Director of PT Portfolio Design and Construction at Genentech. She is a project management professional who has built processes and programs from the ground up, focusing on what is right for the business. Patti has expertise across multiple disciplines, which include engineering, facility management, business operations, and supply chain and manufacturing, just to name a few. Patti has experience in a number of industries, which include pharmaceutical, commercial, and government. Patti, thank you very much for being on the podcast. How are you today?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. To get things started, maybe you could tell us more about yourself and your background.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a licensed professional engineer. I have a background in material science and engineering from Cornell University, and I did my master's in business administration at San Francisco State University. In my spare time, my wife and I are chasing our 2.5-year-old son around all parks within the Bay Area.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you have quite a busy life then.
At the moment, yes.
Fantastic. And to dive into our topic of choice today, what does diversity mean to you?
Before I jump in, what does it mean to you? What comes to mind when you think of diversity, Aaron?
Diversity, everyone having equal opportunities, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's outside of work. It should be diverse. There should be everyone having their own say and opinions and being able to do the same jobs, do everything the same without any criticism there.
Yeah, I like that. I think oftentimes when we think of diversity, the first couple of things that might come to mind are gender, right? Trying to get women and men in the workplace at an equal level. Maybe things like race, even backgrounds. Where I like to go with it, especially as I think about the structure of my team, is more around the intangibles. So you have things like experience, education, risk appetite, even. I think we strive a lot for diversity of thought here. And that's so that we can get really the most creative work out of our team. I actually have an experiment if you want to try. A good friend of mine, Joanna Tong, who's an expert in the D&I space, shared this with me the other week, and I thought this might be a great forum to showcase it. Are you open to it?
Absolutely.
Okay. We're going to go through a series of questions, and out of it, we're going to get 2 answers.
Okay.
So the first question is pick a number between 1 and 10.
Yeah.
Multiply it by 9.
Yes.
Okay. If it's a 2-digit number, I want you to add them together.
Yeah.
Now subtract 5.
Yeah.
And then convert that number into the letter of the alphabet that it corresponds to.
Okay.
So A would be 1, B would be 2.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, now here's our first answer. Think of a country that begins with that letter. And just hold it in your head.
Okay. Yep.
Okay, so we've got our country. All
Yes.
right. Now we're going to go back to our numbers. You remember your number?
The original one, yes.
Okay. Add 1 to it.
Okay.
And now convert that number into the letter of the alphabet. So you're really just going the next letter down.
Okay.
Got it? Now think of an animal that begins with that letter.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so we got our country and we've got our animal.
Okay.
Okay, what are they?
I had Denmark and I had giraffe.
Ooh. We were supposed to get to E, so for the letter. So if you had to think of an animal quickly that starts with the letter E, what would that be?
Elephant.
Elephant. Okay.
Yes.
So the goal is to get everyone to a D and an E. And 90% of people will say Denmark and elephant.
I had Denmark.
Yep. And so the purpose is, if you were to do this in a room full of people, right, you'd have 90% of the people kind of with the same thought process, and hopefully you have that other 10% that say things like the Dominican Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, egrets, emus, eagles, elks, right? All these other animals that exist. That isn't the first thing that come to mind. And really what I'm trying to do is find ways to attract that other kind of 10% diversity of thought in terms of how we solve problems here at Genentech, and how we approach our solutions in the most creative ways we can.
That's really interesting. I wasn't expecting this to be on the podcast today, so that was a nice little exercise. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Makes me think that I really do have to brush up on my knowledge of animals and geography. Safe to say I wasn't at school at that.
It helps when you have a 2.5-year-old running around as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just to draw back on that, this exercise, did you use this within your team? And was it like the same results, or was it varied, or?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we got to. We had most folks pick Denmark. And I was actually curious to try this with you because you are in Ireland.
Yeah.
And I'm in the United States. And so we have, I assume, vastly different educational upbringings, and yet Denmark is our go-to country. We did have a couple other animals come out of it, so that was interesting to see, but vast majority is an elephant.
Yeah, it's crazy. I have never heard of this like the quiz. I'll definitely be looking into different ways to get my thought process changing, and if it comes up in future, I'll know not to use those two examples. And just to bring it back to like working within a team, how would you normally bring out the best in your team? Is it through little exercises like this, or is there a number of initiatives that you've learned over your many years in your career that you're able to implement?
Yeah, I think I've been very fortunate in my early career to have amazing managers and mentors. And for me, what it comes down to is treating people as people, right? Not just as cogs within the machine. We all show up to work, but that doesn't mean that our familial obligations suddenly disappear, or the thoughts in our head around what's for dinner tonight and who's doing pickup are going to go away, right? So it's really respecting and allowing space for people to be who they are, right? And who you are is, yes, an employee at the company, but you're also a member of your family, you're a member of your community, of society, and so you've got commitments everywhere, and we allow space for that, and we respect that, right? So I feel like as more people are feeling supported in all aspects of their life, that allows them to focus then on the things at hand.
Amazing. That kind of actually is similar to what our approach is with Cora. When everyone was working from home that time, everyone kind of got used to being home with their families. And then as the world started to open up again, of course, kids were going back to school, and Philip, our CEO, and all our managers do encourage us, like, if you're working during the day and you have to go collect your child, don't be worrying about the work. The kids come first. You got to be with the family, and you're going to get your work done. And it's not putting that pressure onto the team, which does truly bring out the best.
Exactly. And I've always been very transparent with my team, right? If you need time to take care of something in your life, take it. You have it, because I know you're not going to be completely focused here at work if you're too worried thinking about that other thing. So let's not try to multitask our lives and stretch people to the point where they start feeling burned out. Especially, I know personally during the pandemic, I had a really hard time drawing the boundary between work and life balance. Work was at home. And so home felt like work all the time. And being back in the office now has given me a little bit of that ability to physically separate the two, right? But also more space to mentally create enough room for both.
Absolutely. I even found that was difficult during the pandemic, because I had my laptop and my setup all in the sitting room. So in the evenings, I was still kind of looking over, like, if I go, I can get 5 minutes done, free up a bit of work tomorrow. But now that we're back in the office, I find I can switch off on my drive home, and I'm not thinking about, oh, I should have sent this email, or I have to catch up on this email, or get this done. So it's nice to be able to kind of break that gap.
Exactly. We all think that we're excellent multitaskers, and it really comes at a price.
Absolutely. And do you have any ways to encourage your team to be vulnerable enough to create this safe space for them to operate? Is this true, giving them the choice of doing certain tasks, or how would you go about this?
Yeah, it comes down to, I think, leading by example, right? I think I started off, especially in the kind of my management career, thinking, okay, this is the way a manager is supposed to be, and this is how a manager shows up. And if I work really hard, then everyone will work really hard and follow. And really, I've learned throughout, kind of my management journey, it once again goes back to treating people as people and treating myself as a person as well. So if I'm the first to show vulnerability and say, look, I didn't get much sleep last night, to be honest, I'm not at 100% today. And I give myself that grace and I share that with my team. That gives them the space to say, you know what, maybe I'm not at 100% either. And that's okay. Right? We're not going to be operating at 110% day in and day out. And it's giving each other, some of that grace and that room and that ability to just be. And really, over time, I think that brings out more of the best in people. If they're allowed to be vulnerable, then they're also allowed to perform really well and allowed to be really strong on other days. And so it's showing people that that's okay. Everything is okay. You as a person, you as an individual with your unique set of challenges and strengths is all accepted.
Amazing. That's amazing. And what is the difference between now compared to 3 years ago? Is it still the same, or has it changed how we've adapted due to the pandemic?
I think it's a big mindset shift, right? We went from being in the office all the time to being at home and showing that we could do our work remotely 100% of the time. And now, coming out of the post-pandemic world, it's like we are in this hybrid phase, in a sense. At least here at Genentech, we're requiring our employees to be on site a majority of the time, which for our department translates to 3 days a week. And I think that's a nice balance, right? I think it gives folks enough time to be in the office to collaborate in person and get that sense of community and culture that you don't necessarily have at home. I know I struggled with periods of isolation working remotely during the pandemic and feeling like I wasn't as connected with people, because the only interaction that you really have with people is putting an actual meeting on a calendar. There are no water cooler talks. There are no like, hey, how was your weekend in between meetings? And so being in the office has been really nice in that regard. And then allowing folks those other 2 days for flexibility, getting in some loads of laundry between meetings and working from home, and still having that sense of kind of self and personal time is really what's working well for us. So yeah, I think the biggest difference is trying to embrace that hybrid mentality, knowing that not everyone's going to be on site every day, right? And being able to accommodate that within your work.
Absolutely. We kind of have the same thing implemented here in Cora, where we're in most of the time, could be 3 days a week, and you can't actually be having a meeting in person with someone where you can actually, you're sitting there and you're not interrupting each other while you're talking. Because I found that was one thing with like Teams or Zoom, you were just constantly waiting for one person to stop so that you could get your point across, and you weren't really listening to what they were saying, and it was just going out the window. And it's that social element as well, like having someone in the office you're talking to. Because when you're at home, you could be making a cup of tea or a coffee and you're talking to your dog or that, and you're like, this isn't the same.
It's not the same. It also forces us, I think, to challenge ourselves a little more in that realm of diversity, right? And diversity of thought. I know folks operate in different ways. And one of the great benefits we saw out of our virtual meetings was that there's an ability to raise your hand and know that you get to speak, and you can see on the screen who's got their hands raised, and there's an order to it, right? In person, sometimes there's that social anxiety of, well, when do I interject? And there's so many things going on, and how do I get my point across? And so there's pros and cons to each approach, and there's strengths that different people have in different settings. And so being able to keep an open mind and recognize that, so that you can take a pause and ask folks if they've got anything to say, or run your meetings a little differently to be able to incorporate kind of all of those viewpoints, is something that we're hoping to encourage more people to do.
That's amazing. And to branch into the project management side of things, before working in life science, you worked in the public sector, for example. How does the biotech sector differ from the other sectors when it comes to project management?
I think it comes down to really the goal of the organization, right? And I know, at least when I was in the public sector, there was always this admiration of the private sector being the grass is greener on the other side, and maybe things go faster and you can get more accomplished. When I was I worked for both the local county level as well as the state level, and in both kind of areas of government, I would say, your primary goal is fiscal responsibility, right? So all of your tools and your processes revolved around fiscal responsibility, which inherently means there are going to be levels of bureaucracy. When I moved to Genentech, I was surprised. There is still bureaucracy, but the goal, the mission statement, was more geared towards, how do we do now what our patients need next? How do we add more patient value, more benefit to society at less cost? And because the overarching goal is value to our patients, that allows us to think about things in a slightly different way. We are still fiscally responsible, don't get me wrong, but our drivers are different. And so there's more willingness, I think, to take risk, right? There's more willingness to try new tools and try new things, because we're trying to get to this goal of value. And so, as we talk about project management, technology is an area where I see the private industry investing in at a far greater pace than, say, the public sector.
Fantastic. And do you think you could teach the other sectors about best practices? Maybe, as you said, like they're implementing it quicker. Is this something that the biotech industry needs to catch up on?
I think it's maybe the other way around, right? I think it's because there is that investment, that desire to add more value, to be fast, to be the first to market in a particular indication. You don't have that ability to. We're going to do that over.
Of course.
Give me a second here.
Yeah, perfect. Take your time.
Can you start from your question again?
Yeah, perfect. And what can it teach other industries about best practices? Could you draw influence from the biotech industry, and how it could influence maybe the public sector?
Yeah, I really like that at Genentech, and I feel like a lot of my peers and colleagues will agree. We're trying to add benefit to society. We're trying to cure diseases and needs within patients that are currently unmet. And so because of that, we're willing to take more risk. And I think in the public sector, in other sectors, there's going to be some hesitancy around adopting new tools quickly. And there's definitely less of a risk appetite. And I saw that kind of in my time, both at the state and at the local levels. And what I love about Genentech is that it's more about doing what's right. That's what drives our decision making, is what is right for the business, what is right for society at this point in time, but also looking out 5-10 years from now. Right? It's really having that North Star that guides everything that you do.
That's perfect. And do you find having a software solution in place helps you with the insights when it comes to this decision making on projects?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say, when I worked in government, we were still doing things on spreadsheets and creating presentations very manually and reporting out information based off of individual files located on individual drives within people's computers. It was very much a manual process. And there's challenges with that. You don't have timely information to make the decisions that you need to make. And here at Genentech, last 2-3 years, actually over the pandemic, we were able to, at least within my department, adopt Cora as the new project and portfolio management software. Within that time frame, we've been able to grow it to other parts of the business. We have Roche within Basel that owns kind of our global entity. We've got our sister organization that does kind of global capital projects. And then we have, our Genentech, our US headquarters site. And so we've got several instances of the same technology now going to allow us to share information among all of our groups faster. And really what that comes down to is, once again, adding value, right? Removing those layers of bureaucracy and being able to provide timely information so that we can make better decisions, so that we are more aware of what's happening in other parts of the organization, in other parts of the world, so that we can come to best practices, share lessons learned, and not all work in our silos, kind of creating that, what's the saying? Has to do with the wheel, starting the wheel from scratch. No, we're going to do that over.
Yeah, reinvent the wheel. Would it be?
No, exactly. That's what I mean. We're not each trying to reinvent the wheel.
That's perfect. And does a software solution bring control to your project portfolio? Does it give you that insight, as we were saying, and help you with your day-to-day essentially of running your projects?
Yeah, I think, especially in the information age that we're in, there's so much data out there. You could collect data point after data point after data point. And what do you do with it is the question, right? And what I love about being able to find a solution that bridges, or is able to bridge all these different groups within the company, we're able to align on standards, align on templates, align on the type of information that we're trying to get to, the type of decisions that we're trying to make, so that the data then feeds up and supports that. We're not just going to be collecting data for the sake of collecting data, right? Everything has a purpose. And what we're trying to drive to is really, how do we execute our projects better, faster? How do we reduce cycle time? How do we get it right the first time? Reduce the number of change orders, things like that. And a lot of the decisions that we need to make are going to be based off of, what are we seeing today? What are those trends? But until we identify those areas that we want to improve, we're just going to have raw data. And so I love that Cora is able to partner with us in finding ways to not only collect the data, but also extrapolate it and interpret it in the ways that we need.
Amazing. And if you don't mind me asking, what have been the main benefits you've noticed since implementing this? Maybe you have some examples, or how has it best benefited you and your team?
Yeah, day to day, right? Previously, all of our software was really focused on being a reporting tool. It was, how much did we spend this month? How much are we expected to spend this year? And it was really a reporting tool for upper management. And it did not improve the day-to-day lives of project managers in how projects actually get executed. And now with the addition of Cora and the ability to create our own workflows, the ability to create our own forms and governance process kind of within the tool, it's really showcasing that we can save so much time. We're no longer emailing things back and forth for review. We've got all of our information. There's one source of truth. I don't have to go dig on someone's computer to find a particular schedule, or, and so it's really creating that repository and being a tool for project managers, not just for upper management. So we're still able to get the reporting that we need, but we're also able to influence the day-to-day of our project managers. And I'm hoping that as our technology journey continues on, that only becomes more evident. One of my North Stars is to be able to click a button and get our entire funding package out of Cora so that it's all together and it's ready for approval, right? That has never existed before. We have processes to ensure that we are being diligent. And because of that, we have several systems that have been adopted over time, and we haven't been able to find a way to consolidate everything yet, but there's hope, right? There's a direction that we want to go in. And that's what keeps me going, is knowing that project management today is very different from project management 3 years ago. And it's going to be very different compared to what we're going to have 5 years from now.
Absolutely. Patti, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this episode of the podcast, from discussing diversity and project management across different sectors. I'd like to do a deep dive sometime in the future again. Love to have you on the podcast and just pick your brain more. So hopefully we can arrange something. And if anyone would like to reach out to find out more about your background, or even to ask you questions based on any of these sectors, where would be the best place to reach you?
You can find me on LinkedIn.
That's perfect. We'll put the link to your profile on our show notes. And once again, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be on the podcast.
It was my pleasure. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.